Hi guys, it's Carrie Ike
and Sarah Norris,
occupational therapist at the STAR Institute.
And we are so extremely excited today, guys, because Carrie and I have been working on something behind the scenes for over a year now, and it's finally out. We're coming out very, very soon.
Yeah, so officially this morning, our Sense videos for adults with SPD launched on our website on SPD University. We'll attach a link below, but what this is it is a course for professionals, for adults, for teenagers, for parents, anybody wanting to learn more about teens, adolescents, adults with SPD, and what does that mean once you get into your teenage and adult years.
So the content from this came from a support group that Carrie and I hosted last January, and we had some wonderful participants that were willing to share their journeys with us and let us record it. And so we turned that into 5 different webinars, so it's a set that goes over 5 different topics.
Yeah, so the topics include, the first one, what we do is just talk about what is SPD. So we talk about the research, we talk about the nosology, the different subtypes, we talk about kind of the intro topics into, now you know what it looks like in childhood, but what does it look like in teenage and adult years?
And then the second one, we get into more about the arousal regulation, so talking about how sensations can make you feel different throughout the day, and how getting the right kinds of sensations in your day can really help you stay calm, focused, and productive.
Yeah. The third one is titled Creating a Sensory Safe Space. So what this is, a sensory safe space is a place that you can go that feels calm, it feels organized, it feels like somewhere you can go when you're feeling in that high arousal state, when life gets overwhelming. So talking about how you can create these sensory safe spaces at home, at school, at work, in the community.
And then the fourth one, we get into the workplace, and so we talk about really all the different sensory aspects of different jobs, and thinking about, instead of trying to find the hacks that are going to help you function in whatever job it is that you're in or that you're pursuing, what would it be like if you could create the perfect environment, the perfect job for you? And it's actually kind of surprising when you go at it from that angle, how many jobs there really are for different people with different sensory needs.
Yeah, and the fifth essential topic that we talk about in our group is stress management in SPD. So thinking about, all of us have stress, we all have to find ways to manage it, but especially once you start incorporating sensory-based challenges, what does stress management look like? What does a daily routine look like? How do you begin thinking about adding calm, and then thinking about, even more so, adding joy to your life using stress management techniques?
So the first 2 are really educational in nature. There's just a lot of content that we're explaining. But the other 3 are really, really practical, and there's worksheets that go along with them to help you do the exercises yourself to figure out what your sensory preferences are, what your sensory safe space would look like, what your sensory friendly job would be like, and really, like Carrie was saying, how you can develop a lifestyle that really supports your sensory needs. So stuff that we find super important, that we talk with people about, that do our consultations, that come for treatment, information that's just not out there, and we really wanted it to be accessible to as many people as possible. So that's why we've given you this really affordable chance to access this information. So right now at pre-sale, it's only $20 for all 5 webinars, and just thinking about how much it costs to talk to Carrie and I on the phone for an hour, like, it's just so affordable, and we really want you to be able to access it and spread it, share it with everybody you know, because we really want this information to be so widespread that a lot of the stigma and misunderstanding about sensory processing disorder can finally start to get taken away.
Yes, so we're going to post the links that you would need for that below. And if you guys have any questions for us, reach out, let us know. We're really excited. We've been waiting for this day for a while. So ask questions, continue the conversation. That's really, like you said, Sarah, this is really why we wanted to launch this, to give even more information, continue to the discussion, give information, and make it accessible to everybody, professionals, individuals, parents, teachers, pretty much anybody.
Yeah, so share it with everyone, please. It's really going to be so meaningful for us to know that people are getting this information that we've just struggled to get out there until now.
Yeah, so we figured today one of the essential topics that we talked about a little bit in our group, but that we didn't get on our webinar because it just became such a big it just became a bigger topic than we expected, and that is socializing in SPD.
Yeah, so when we think about dealing with sensations, when you add another person to the mix, just one other person, that person brings all the sensations with them, and that can be difficult. And I think one of the things that happened in our group that made it so hard to really talk about was when you have sensory sensitivities especially, you are sensitive to other people's smells and sounds and everything like that, but there's also just different moods and energies that people give off. And when you enter a room with more than one other person, it can be really hard to figure out who's giving what vibe and what it means, and did you do something wrong, or what is going on. I feel like so many individuals with sensory challenges walk into rooms and don't know what it is that they're detecting, but there's something funky.
Yeah, so a lot of the individuals I work with consider themselves empaths, which is kind of another route to think about explaining this. Kind of that feeling of walking into a room filled with anticipation or filled with stress, and immediately that frustration, that anticipation becomes yours. And that can be within a household as well. So your kids are having a really off day, and immediately you're having a really off day. And that just became a really big topic in our discussion in our sense group. I think all of our group members immediately responded, yes, that's me 110%. And since then, almost all the individuals I've evaluated and treated, this is something we spend a lot of time talking about. Not only what arousal is yours, but what arousal is other people's. And it's a big topic, but I think it's such an important one when thinking about socialization beyond just the sensory components of socialization. The physical touch, being close in proximity with somebody else, the visual aspects, what color somebody's wearing, what pattern they're wearing, the smells that come along with being in a crowd. So it's such a big topic.
And I think one of those things that we did with big topics in our group was talk about let's turn it a little bit. So when we were talking about workplaces, it wasn't, okay, let's figure out what all the triggers could be and how to handle that. No, let's look at what would the perfect workplace be for you. And so thinking about socializing, I think it's really important to figure out, well, what is a meaningful social interaction for you? Because you may feel like you have to go to parties and you have to host 20 people at your house and you have to go to happy hours on dates, and there are some of these expectations that you actually don't have to do if it doesn't work for you. So thinking about, you know what, I do so much better one-on-one or in small groups. Okay, only invite 5 people over, 1 person. Just figure out what works and break it down.
Yeah, and one thing that I thought was really interesting that we talked about in the group was the idea of going to social settings and getting your social energy, but not actually being a participant in the socializing. So, for example, going to a park and sitting on a bench and watching other people around you, that can give you some social energy without having all of the demands of a social interaction. Other things we talked about was, if you do end up at a busy happy hour, or your work is hosting something with a lot of people, finding, where's a smart place to sit? Where is a smart place? How can you take breaks within that interaction? How can you prepare yourself ahead of time to make it the most manageable? But I think you're exactly right in thinking about reducing those have-tos that you think you have to do in socializing. So maybe you find one person that you can socialize with in the corner, having one conversation rather than trying to manage a group conversation. That's such a multi-sensory task to have to be doing, and so many of the individuals I've worked with, this is such a hard thing to do. with all the sensory stimulation that goes into socializing in a big group. So kind of starting to brainstorm. And I think some of the things we talk about in the webinar kind of get you thinking on this wavelength, like you said, about, well, what does work for me and what are the characteristics that will work for me?
So I think that planning ahead is really crucial. And for most social settings, you do know ahead of time that there is this social expectation of, yeah, there's this work party I need to go to, or, oh, I have to meet my girlfriend's family, things like that, where, you know, having a plan ahead of time when you're able to be regulated enough to think is really important. So thinking about, okay, I know it's going to be really hard for me when they're singing happy birthday. So maybe I can just be in the back of the room, and if it gets too much, I can head out to get a breath of fresh air or hit the bathroom or something. So you know yourself well enough to know what you can handle and what you can't. And it's also really helpful if you have a friend, if you have someone that you know is going to be there, just knowing that someone you know is there can be something that helps you stay calm. And it's a bonus if that person knows you well enough to know that you do have these sensitivities or you do have these challenges, and that they can be your go-to person. If you say, hey, I gotta head outside for a minute, can you let me know when they have the speech, or whatever, there is an event at the party or the wedding or wherever you're at that you don't want to miss. Like, you can figure out how to pick and choose what you need to be a part of and what you are allowed to step away from.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, learning from all these teens and adults that I've worked with, the biggest thing that all of them tell me is that they love to socialize and they love to make social connections with other people. It's not about the desire to want to make friends, to make acquaintances, to have reciprocal conversation. It's more of all the multi-sensory components that go into it that just make it really challenging and puts the individual in that state of high arousal where they can't access any of those abilities anymore. And so, you know, even as young as childhood, some of these teachers are pinpointing some of these kids as kids who are having social difficulties and that they need help with their social participation, when in reality, what we really need to be looking at are the multisensory components surrounding it, not the individual. And I mean, every individual is different, but for a lot of these individuals, it's not the individual social component, it's all the foundational underlying sensory-based components that go with it.
I think that I've seen that highlighted so many times with the children I've worked with is, yeah, he knows all of the social rules, like he knows what he's supposed to do. It's just when he is playing with his sister, he doesn't do them. And it's that regulation piece of, well, of course he can't access what he should be doing because he's gone into this fight or flight mode, and he's protecting himself. So I think it is really important to think about when you are socializing, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is figuring out what it is that you need and finding comfort in advocating for that. So if you're at a party and everybody's gathered around the food table and talking and it's getting loud and someone wants to ask you about something, it might be really hard for you to concentrate on that conversation. So you might say, oh man, I'd love to talk to you about that, but can we head outside onto the patio? It's really loud in here for me. So finding those ways, most people are more than happy to accommodate if they just know. If you don't let them know, they're going to wonder, well, man, he was rude. He didn't answer any of my questions, and he just walked away. What? So having that presence of mind to notice, uh-oh, I'm starting to feel stress. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, and figuring out what your strategy can be in that moment is truly life-changing.
Yeah, and I know for many of you out there listening to this, it might seem like, wow, that's a difficult step to get to. How am I supposed to identify what it is in my environment that is the trigger, that is the over-responsive pattern for me? And again, with our sense videos, that's where we're kind of taking a step back and we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to start at the foundations, kind of work with you as much as we can do from the computer screen without having a dynamic conversation, having you fill out checklists, having you fill out boxes that are giving you the information that you need to start thinking in this manner. This webinar is designed to kind of be a first step, a first educational kind of problem-solving step. Again, we have the consultations and we have assessment and treatment here at our location in Denver, and we also have phone-based consultations that we do. So those are always options. This is kind of just that first step in learning about yourself, learning about SPD, learning that it is in fact real, and that you aren't making this stuff up, and that it doesn't go away once you become a teen. It definitely doesn't go away once you become an adult. And how do you kind of shift and start thinking about it in those teenage and adulthood years?
And I think one of the things that I wanted to say is that if you get the content and you're listening to it and you're watching it and you're doing the worksheets and it's just not clicking for you, don't feel bad, because this can be pretty complex information. We tried to make it simple, we tried to make it digestible, but there are some concepts in there that might not make sense, especially if you don't have someone to help you identify what your responses are. So don't be afraid to reach out. We definitely want to help you with problem solving if it's something that's hard for you.
Yeah, so check out the links below. Let us know what questions you have. We're really excited, so keep the conversation going.